The magnificent Dohany Street Synagogue, the largest in Europe. 70 years ago, it marked the border of the Budapest ghetto. Now it's a symbol of the rebirth of the shattered Jewish community in Hungary. Close to 500,000 Jews, almost all from the Hungarian countryside, were deported in the spring of 1944 in the space of 8 weeks and murdered at Auschwitz.
Today it's very good and very flourishing because our life is 100%, about 95% is joy and happiness like a Jewish life, and 5% is the problem.
Why then, in this lovely cafe in the affluent 13th district of Budapest, why do we revive painful memories of the past?
There are many old people living in Hungary who are survivors of the Holocaust. They are terrified about what's happening. They really think that it's a start again of what had happened before.
These are the reasons for the unease in the Jewish community and beyond.
There are Jewish Hungarians, Hungarian Jews, whichever you might prefer. So there is a double identity there. And it's not my job to say, that somebody has to be loyal to this country or has to be loyal to whatever. But of course, I would like to see that Hungarian Jews have loyalty for Hungary.
In last year's national elections, Jobbik became the third largest faction in the parliament. Jobbik Vice Chairman Levente Murani. I am a Nazi, a fascist, an anti-Semite, if that is what is necessary to represent the true Hungarian interests and the sanctity of the 1,000-year-old Hungarian state. These are the militant offshoots of Jobbik and the even more radical right. The drumbeat of anti-Semitism is once again audible in Hungary, a constant, ominous soundtrack beneath the comfortable lives of Budapest Jews, especially in a climate of economic crisis. Symbols used by the radical right-wing groups recall those of the Arrow Cross, Hungary's ruling Nazi party in October 1944, which murdered thousands of Jews on the banks of the River Danube and deported thousands more to their deaths in forced marches to the Austrian border. After Hungary emerged from Soviet communist rule 3 decades ago, the extreme right subculture developed quickly, with uniformed militia groups, skinheads, and a slew of neo-Nazi ultra-nationalist rock bands with names like Blood Libel, Power, and Vendetta.
It was helping us to find a clear target for the hatred that we had within us. Look, the Jews are rich, they have taken all the money, and that's why we are poor. And that's why we have difficulties.
Meet Karl Pfeiffer, journalist, 83 years old. He spent his childhood in Hungary, survived the Holocaust, and is now a journalist living in Vienna, his gaze still focused on Budapest, where he's been ruffling feathers for well over half a century.
In one way, it's becoming worse. Of course, it cannot come to a Holocaust because there's no Nazi army coming, and this is impossible. But there are not only Jews who are discriminated and who are hated here. You have gypsies, and that's a different problem. But here, many people in Hungary believe that there will be an ethnic war here if it goes on like this.
It must be said, physical attacks against Jews and Jewish property are relatively rare, totaling some 20 a year. However, verbal abuse and virulent media attacks are on the rise.
There is an escalation of anti-Jewish sentiment in Hungary today, but it absolutely does not resemble to the situation before the war. The anti-Semites before the war knew very well what they wanted from the Jews. They wanted their goods, their property. They wanted their positions in the society. They wanted to exclude them from certain professions, doctors, lawyers, whatever. So it was a political program. Nowadays, there is nothing similar in contemporary anti-Semitism. Though, as I said before, if you walk on the street, you hear much more often anti-Semitic slurs or remarks or outbursts.
It feels very bad. when I hear in the news that people are cursing Jews, or when I see in the evening news that a riot was gone and they are shouting, "Dirty Jews, Jews go home, death to the Jews," yes, it hurts. It hurts a lot.
How dangerous is this development, in your view?
I think it creates a very unpleasant atmosphere on one hand. And the second consequence of it could be that it can prepare the ground for physical violence.
I always told my kids, if somebody tells you, in Hungarian they call it büdös zsidó, dirty Jew, he's not talking about you. He's not talking about you. He's talking about himself, that he's disturbed. So whenever my kids hear such a comment, instead of starting to be afraid of something, they say, "Oh, what is his problem? Is he drunk or what?"
Let it be clear, the clouds have not yet obscured the sky over this beautiful city. There are, of course, other voices, many of them at the highest levels of government.
On the one hand, Jobbik, this far-right party, is a dangerous party, stupid party, but and certainly there are people in it who are anti-Semitic. If the country is doing better economically, then I am sure that they will lose their support, and well, reason will prevail, and common sense, and also I think the best Hungarian traditions, when the Hungarians really welcomed the Jewish immigrants escaping from Soviet or Russian persecution, from the pogroms, and it was a very successful coexistence which we had 100 years ago.
There are also Christian religious leaders who are devoting their lives to coming to terms with Hungary's past. One of them is Sándor Németh, head of the Pentecostal Evangelical Faith Church, now the fourth largest in Hungary.
As I grew up, I witnessed these atrocities and the injustice that was committed against the Jewish people, and I feel that Christianity has a debt towards the Jewish people because of what happened, and I felt that it is absolutely necessary that a movement appear which counters this evil.
On the Sunday we were there, 10,000 people filled the vast space of the converted brick factory, openly and ecstatically voicing their support for the Jewish people and for Israel. Németh and his church have faced frequent death threats from the far right, hence the tight security at the entrance. But that has not deterred him from his openly pro-Israeli stance. In fact, a menorah adorns the plaza in front of the Faith Church, the same symbol that appears in the Jobbik weekly Barricad. On a hill overlooking Budapest, a Catholic saint is holding a menorah instead of a cross. The caption, "Wake up, Budapest. Is this what you want?" Behind this cartoon is a new twist in the anti-Semitic discourse of Hungary. But recently, in a feat of mental acrobatics, some Hungarians, including in Jobbik, have taken their traditionally anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist and anti-Israeli positions one step further. They're now charging that Israeli investors in Hungarian real estate are part of the so-called international Jewish conspiracy and are plotting to occupy and colonize Hungary and turn it into what they call a new Palestine. Are they serious? Deadly serious.
This cartoon which you're referring to does have a history as well, like everything in this country. This was just shortly after the statement of Shimon Peres, which have been denied continuously by the ambassador of Israel to Hungary and by all the Israeli politicians.
It wasn't denied. He said it was a very bad joke. He said it as a joke, he was sort of misquoting a Leonard Cohen song. He said, we'll buy Manhattan, we'll buy Budapest. He was trying to say, don't worry, our economic situation is good and our exports are good. But you have taken, your party has taken that one sentence from Shimon Peres, and I don't believe you honestly think Shimon Peres has designs on on Budapest wants to occupy Hungary? You don't really believe that.
This was not a joke. I have read the exact sentence, a quotation from Mariv, a newspaper which has published it. The sentence from beginning to the end and the context, so that nobody can say that I'm taking the statement out of its context.
It's absolutely crazy, this speeches. The Israeli people who bring the money to Budapest, they invest to the buildings, to the factories, and there's no any problem.
Márton Jónyosi is chairman of the Jobbik faction in Parliament and vice chairman of the Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee. Like many Jobbik members of Parliament, he presents a new face of the radical right, urbane, articulate, well-educated, and holding a toxic mix of anti-Israeli and anti-Jewish views.
I think Iran has a valid position on certain things, and I mean on the Palestinian question. I mean, if we are talking about the Palestinian conflict, say on its foreign policy, on Iran's foreign policy, I would say probably not the best way communicated at all times.
What they want to do is to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. That's their foreign policy.
Well, Israel's foreign policy is to wipe Iran out, as far as I'm concerned.
Anybody who is the enemy of the United States and Israel is their friend. I think the major reason here is the anti-Semitism. So they like Iran because of their anti-Semitism and because of their hostility against Israel in general.
I am quite convinced, although I cannot prove it, that there are some foreign opinions, foreign agents also helping Jobbik. Actually, we do know that some Russian money is behind that party, and they had admitted ties with Zhirinovsky and some other Russians. So there are foreign interests who want to present Hungary as a country where anti-Semitism is ripe.
And to the most important question of all, how does the future look to Jews in Hungary? As always, it depends upon whom you ask.
It's very scary. So actually I don't want to live here. I really don't want to.
Where will you live?
In Israel or maybe in the States.
If you just try to look normal and do not advertise you are different and you are proud of it, people accept you much easier, and you may encounter less atrocities, but in the end you can believe whatever you want.
So I understand that you do see your future here in Hungary and that you believe that you can live here comfortably and safely in your future. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Are the young Hungarian Jews, those who are affiliated to the Jewish community, are many of them moving to Israel, and is that something that you encourage?
It's not so many. It's I suppose the last 20 years is not more than 1,000 Jewish young people went to the last 20
years.
Yes.
The majority of the people in this country do not think the Jews are members of the society of this country, you know. And but I definitely stay. I'm not scared, and I believe I have the right to be here because I'm a Hungarian citizen. But what my students told you about the situation is all true, and I can understand that a lot of them would leave.
The will, the desire to move forward is strong in Hungary's Jewish community, and so is the inability to forget the past, a past which is now casting an ominous shadow over what lies ahead. Lea Zinder for IBA News in Budapest.